Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
This is a catastrophe.
You are now listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
That's what I wished for when I blew out my candle.
Locking down the middle of the day, live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studios. This is Hunt Palmer.
The floor is yours.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Wednesday. Memes are brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools. Jacob Beck, Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. Fired up. You are here with us. Middle of the work week here. So we're starting to work towards the weekend. Just one more day in the saddle for me and then a long weekend. And then we'll lock in for some real postseason baseball. But there is postseason baseball being played at this current juncture there between games over in Hoover, and we're going to get you caught up on all of that. Koki Riley will join us here in 15 minutes to talk Tigers. He met with Jay Johnson as well as the rest of the media did yesterday, and Koki will certainly be traveling over to Hoover probably Friday, maybe tomorrow. We'll get his thoughts on the SEC tournament and what LSU needs to get accomplished here over the next few days. However, they're in Hoover. We'll do our SC Power rankings in the second hour. Looking forward to that. Blake Baker sound coming up at 2 o'clock. Luke Johnson, normally with us on Thursday, is going to bump up to today at 2:15. So we'll chat with Luke about the Saints coming up an hour and 15 minutes from right now. Let's start things the way we start them every single day, our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
All right, so let's talk about LSU as it relates to postseason play. That's kind of the theme of this week every single year. LSU's not playing until Friday night this week, which is new because of the new format. But one game in LSU's pool has been played, and it was completed a little bit earlier. Texas A&M routs Mississippi State 9-0 was the final. Jace Laviolette hit a grand slam early in that game. Ryan Prager threw 5 2/3 shutout, and the Aggie bullpen made it stand up. Mississippi State had absolutely nothing to play for in Hoover. They did not throw Pico Khan today. It's a game that did not matter to them at all, and it matters the world to Texas A&M. So that showed. I would suggest Texas A&M is probably a better team than Mississippi State, and certainly a better team with Ryan Prager on the mound than Mississippi State is. But in any event, sometimes you look at motivation, sometimes you just look at execution. A&M, much the better team. So the Aggies continue on in LSU's pod. The Aggies will play Auburn on Thursday now. That game was supposed to be on... the rain delays got me all screwed up. I knew they're playing tomorrow. And that game means a lot to Auburn and means a ton to Texas A&M.
Wait, so you're saying there was a rain delay, huh?
Yeah, we can get to that. We can just detour and get to that right now.
Remember what you said a few days ago?
I was contacted 4 times yesterday when that game was rained out. 4 times. And my response, one was Patrick Coogan, who said, "You've done it again." And I didn't even know what he was talking about. I was sitting with my kitchen counter dealing with 2 kids, and I go, "What'd I do this time? I can't possibly have screwed up at the kitchen counter." And he said, "You said there weren't going to be any rain delays. Look at the SEC schedule." And I was like, well, here's the deal. People really need to stop listening to this show because I can't be held accountable for everything that I say all the time. Sometimes it just needs to slip through the cracks.
No, it's not going to happen, huh?
I thought the forecast looked pretty good, but I will say, to my credit, which I need a lot of credit these days, they did build in a lot of extra time on Thursday and Friday where they can play these games. So they're going to get this game played in front of LSU in the bracket and not compromise anybody having to play 2 games in a day or play until 3 o'clock in the morning or all that kind of stuff, assuming the skies cooperate. And I'm looking at a picture right now of the Hoover Met in Hoover, Alabama. It is gorgeous blue skies. I don't see a cloud anywhere. So really, am I that wrong? Maybe, maybe not. You be the judge. But either way, LSU's still playing as scheduled against the Texas A&M and Auburn winner. And I honestly don't have a great answer as to who I would like to play. I think that's the question LSU fans want to ask. One, I don't know who Auburn's planning to throw in the game on Thursday, which is tomorrow. And then you look at Texas A&M, and I'm sure they're going to throw Justin Lampkin, although he did throw a lot of pitches in the outing of his career over the weekend in Athens. That was just a Friday night gem of a game by him. Maybe they throw him. Maybe they throw Patton. Maybe they just pitch off and see what they can do. But the season's on the line, so I'm going to assume Justin Lampkin's going to want the baseball. So that's probably who's going to pitch against Auburn. So Miles Patton probably lines up against LSU. He handcuffed LSU a little bit. He's not very good. But A&M's RPI is much lower, so a loss to them could potentially drop you a spot or two, where a loss to a very, very high RPI Auburn probably wouldn't move you at all. Yet you're competing against Auburn, and at that point they would have more quad one wins, a better RPI, and 4-0 record against you. So I can come up with solutions both ways. My gut tells me whether or not LSU beats A&M or loses to A&M, or beats Auburn or loses to Auburn on Friday night, that LSU is still a top 8 unless something really goes haywire with Florida State, Oregon, Hawaii. Those are probably the 3 biggest. I don't think Florida can get there. I don't think Alabama can get there. I suppose anything's possible, but that's the way I feel when I look at the numbers. So to boil this down to really dumb terms, LSU is just better off winning on Friday. Now, as I said yesterday, I'd rather LSU win Friday with a light use of Cade Anderson, get Anthony Ianson out on the mound Saturday, and get out of there. But I can't give you a definitive result now that we know who LSU's opponent's going to be. It's either going to be Auburn or Texas A&M. An A&M loss would hurt worse in terms of your RPI and your resume. An Auburn loss would hurt you relative to Auburn. A win is even more cement in that top 8 national seed. Now, there's nothing right now that's immediately impactful for LSU when I look at the schedule today. Florida State does not play until Friday. They could theoretically work their way towards a top 8 national seed. Right now, when I look at the current RPI, which is now updating as games finalize all over the country, Florida State's RPI is probably not in a position to get a top 8 national seed from the ACC. North Carolina is in good shape there based on what they did over the weekend. And I don't think Georgia Tech can get there, even though they won the league outright by a couple of games because their strength of schedule was pathetic. But if you look at Florida State, they're on the outside looking in unless they get hot in the ACC tournament. And right now they're at a 12, and they don't play until Friday. So they've got a long way to go before we get into Florida State. Now you look at Oregon. That's a team I'm a little fearful of coming in from the outside because they're going to have a Big Ten championship. They could win the Big Ten title. And yes, the Big Ten stinks at baseball. But Oregon does have a strong metric against the RPI top 25, 40, and 60. So that's something to be aware of. And they could theoretically boast 2 championships that LSU doesn't have. And while, yes, anything you do in the SEC to me is going to far trump anything you do in the Big Ten, the selection committee is going to use those metrics as a data point. And that could theoretically impact LSU. Oregon plays Michigan State tomorrow on Thursday, and then Nebraska on Friday. Neither of those is massively impactful from an RPI perspective unless you lose. And if Oregon loses one game over the course of the next 3 days, one time, if they lose, they're out. They got to run the table. So that's the only thing that makes me fearful with Oregon. The other team that I'm looking at, and we talked about this on Monday, but I'll keep reiterating because it actually does, that game is played today, Hawaii. And no, Hawaii's not coming to get a top 8, okay? Obviously. But Hawaii is on Oregon State's resume. I think Oregon State's resume stinks, but their RPI is ahead of LSU, and their RPI quad 1 wins are comparable to LSU. Not as good, but comparable. Right now, they're 10-9, and LSU is 13-10. LSU's got 3 more wins, but the winning percentage is fairly comparable. But if you take the Hawaii series off of Oregon State's metrics, then all of a sudden, Oregon State drops down to 7-8 in quad 1. And that is way different than 13-10 where LSU is. That's a 6 game in terms of wins, and that's a losing record in quad 1. I need Hawaii out of the top 60 to erase all doubt. If Hawaii gets out of the top 60, I cannot make a case for Oregon State. It can't be done. And you may say that's stupid, and I would agree it's probably stupid. But these numbers are there. They're in front of you. And you can discuss them more deeply, and I'm sure the selection committee does, but I'm just looking right now at Oregon State's resume, and their quad 1 says 10-9. The second it says 7-8 instead because Hawaii's out of the top 60, I feel a lot better. So while I'm trying to avoid the nightmare scenario, just let Hawaii lose a game, and they play one tonight against Cal Santa Barbara. It's at 5 o'clock, and frankly, I'm probably going to watch it. I'll have the SEC game on, but I'll probably monitor Hawaii as well. And if Hawaii loses a game to Cal Santa Barbara and drops out of the top 60, I will probably come on this show tomorrow and say, look, I don't think there's anything to worry about anymore. Because to take LSU out of the top 8, I've got to have somebody in the top 8. And right now, Oregon at 13, creeping in. Oregon State nabbing one of those. And then Florida State charging up from 14 is really all that I'm afraid of with LSU's RPI at 8. So, in short, we've kind of drawn this out, but in short, I don't really care who LSU plays on Friday. You got Cade Anderson. Go win the game. I'm paying attention to Florida State, who starts on Friday. I'm paying attention to Oregon, who starts tomorrow. I'm paying attention to Hawaii, who starts in 4 hours. And I believe that this will be settled from LSU's perspective before they take the field on Friday. But as I sit here right now, I can still conjure this up. So I'm going to enjoy the SEC baseball today. It's going to be really good. The first game was not competitive, although it kind of looked like it was pretty good on paper. I think Alabama and Tennessee is very, very fascinating coming up. Alabama's RPI is 9. I don't think they're a huge threat to go get a top 8 unless they run the table. LSU beat Alabama 2 out of 3. I'm looking at my SEC Power rankings, and Alabama, over the course of the last 7 series, are 2-7, and one of those wins is Missouri. So I don't think that Alabama's a huge threat, but don't let them get hot. They're not in LSU's bracket, so it's not really LSU's concern. But Alabama, to win this thing, would have to beat Tennessee and then beat Texas and then take on either Arkansas, LSU, Auburn, Ole Miss, Florida. So theoretically, maybe, but that's a long way away as far as me trying to map that out. If I got into all those scenarios, we'd be here a minute. So I think LSU's okay, but probably the best medicine for my concern would be to just win the game on Friday. That's our opening drive presented by Genesis. We'll talk to Koki Riley about all this when we come back next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools.
Chugging along here, Wednesday shows brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools. Not a great day to be out at the pool today in Baton Rouge, but a lot of those days are on the horizon. If you want to get into the pool of your dreams, contact Renaissance Homes and Pools. Call Joey directly or find him online at builtbyrenaissance.com, builtbyrenaissance.com. Koki Riley covers the LSU Fighting Tiger baseball squad for The Advocate, joins us every single Wednesday, does so now before he heads to Hoover. Koki, how are you?
Doing well. How's it going?
It's going quite well. They were in a little bit of bind there last time we spoke on Friday. Had lost the season opener kind of in stunning fashion with Zach Cowan on the mound, but their two aces stepped up, and the offense was good enough the last 2 days to get it done. Kind of workmanlike Friday and Saturday. How'd you characterize the last 2 wins?
Yeah, workmanlike, getting your business done, all that sort of stuff. I think that's exactly what happened in the latter half of this series, and there are some dicey moments in those games as well. They didn't dominate to the level that you would have figured they would dominate at, except for maybe the end of the second game. But you know, you had to get the wins, and you got the wins, and now you're in the spot heading into the SEC tournament where you don't have too much pressure on yourself now.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that unless a lot of things happen consecutively. I think LSU's in really good shape. Offensively for LSU, not the huge outburst that Auburn put or Florida put on South Carolina, but was there a player or two that you saw swinging the bat you thought they could use that out of this guy?
Well, Jake Brown against righties and Ethan Fry against lefties. I mean, those two guys have become, pretty elite hitters against those sorts of pitching, that sort of pitching. And not to say that, Jake Brown can't face lefties or Ethan Fry can't face righties. I think Fry had a hit or two on the final game of the series as well. But those guys are pretty good athletes with really good swings, and they see the ball well out of those slots. So, I think that's fairly promising. If you're LSU offensively, Jared Jones playing better is promising as well, even though, again, a lot of his home runs this season have come off of, weaker competition. So you want him to, step up as we head into the postseason and whatnot. But, it's better that he's playing better for LSU than not, right? So you have that going for you. And, it's odd because this team, I don't think they have bad lineup depth, because I still think a guy like Chris Stanfield's better than most 9-hitters across the country, if not all of them. And even the back half of the order where, Luis Hernandez can do something occasionally. And you don't have total zeros at the plate offensively in that back half of the order. But yet I still think, the weakness of this team is on offense. And I think, if the top guys do what they're supposed to do, that would go a very long way. Because again, I don't think it's a depth issue necessarily. It's more of a, the top guys just trying to be the top guys,
I find Jared Jones's emergence particularly interesting once you got out of that gauntlet of talented arms and you saw how he performed early in the season and how he performed in the midweek, and then you realize the teams are going to be coming in here in a regional, and you feel like, I would put him as an early pick for regional player of the weekend, MVP, if you will, just because, you face Liam Doyle, it may be a little bit of a challenge, but you drop it down one notch, and he seems to do pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Ethan Fry is a really interesting guy, too, because this is a guy we know can mash lefties. They faced a ton of lefties this season, and there have been times where he's been one of the only guys who's hit against that pitching. Think of the Texas A&M series, right, where he is hitting the cover off the ball and almost everyone else is struggling. And I was looking at, ESPN's latest draft rankings, and Ethan Fry cracked the top 150, and Jared Jones didn't. Which I thought was really interesting, and it kind of shows how, I even talked to another scout about Fry the other day, and how he is kind of, raised up the ranks a little bit in terms of how he's viewed, nationally as a pro prospect, even, not just as a player on the field. So I find him really interesting. I find Jared, obviously, he's so important to them and their success. Derek Curiel, when this offense was humming, it was when he was on that 40-some-odd game hitting on base streak, right? And I think him trying to get closer to where he was then it would be big as it heads into the postseason, because obviously it was hard to really rely on a freshman as much as they relied on him early on. And when you saw the offense start to struggle a little bit as well.
Jaden Newton, Chase Shores, your thoughts on those two guys as they enter the postseason?
They're in interesting spots. These are two guys who are kind of aligned in a lot of ways, right? Like Shores was number one pitcher out of Texas. Newt was the number one pitcher out of California. They both, unfortunately, have to undergo Tommy John surgery their freshman years, pretty much wiping out their entire sophomore years, and for Newt, his entire freshman year as well. And there were a lot of expectations for these two guys heading into this season, back when they were freshmen, and for Shores, just heading into the season period. And, for Shores, it's been a lot of ups and downs, mostly downs, if we're being perfectly honest here. But I think he's looked better overall. I think the mechanical changes have helped him out. I think him closing off his stance a little bit and sort of hiding that arm slot is to help play up the fastball a little bit. And now that he can release, he can just throw 100 without thinking. And I think that sort of helps him, and it plays up the slider as well. So I think he's looked a little bit better, even if the command still isn't quite where you'd want it to be. But with Newt, he's just slowly gotten better throughout the year. The more comfortable he's gotten on the mound, and the further away he gets from that surgery, the better the command is. And that's exactly what you want to see. And this guy he's a talented guy. People forget that this is someone who could have easily been picked in the first 5 or so rounds of the draft coming out of high school, and he decided to come here instead. So the power of Jay Johnson's West Coast connections really coming through. And, injuries kind of marred the first 2 years of his career. But now, as he sort of getting out of that, he's looked much, much better. I'm really interested to see if they try to stretch him this weekend, maybe get him to 3 or 4 innings more comfortably. I know he retired 12 straight against South Carolina, but one, that's South Carolina, and two, he did get hit a little bit toward the end of that outing. So if you can really stretch him out and he can be a really solid 3 or 4 inning option for you, like that really, really changes the way you look at this pitching staff heading into a regional and even heading into the super regional in Omaha. So he's become a really interesting guy now for them. He's become one of the guys you have to trust in these situations.
I completely agree. Y'all talked to Jay yesterday about the way he's going to approach this tournament and how he feels about where they stand in the top 8. He was pretty adamant. We're top 8. We've earned that. Do you think that's just talking to the committee? Do you think he believes that? And then in using that information, how do you think he handles Friday?
Well, of course he's talking to the committee, right? Like he's not doing his job if he's not talking to the committee,
Sure.
to, at least to somewhat, right? But I don't know if I totally agree with them last year where it was like, oh, we're easily a tournament team. And that was like after the Ole Miss series when I don't think that was necessarily the case. And then they proved that on the field. But I think I agree with them this time, though, that I think they're a top 8 team. I think they deserve to be a top 8 team. I know the metrics say they're more borderline than they are the number 1 team, but like they're really somewhere between 1 and 8. I don't think they're somewhere in between 5 and 12. I think that's kind of the best way I would describe it. Is this the best team in the country? I don't know. I don't know who is the best team in the country. But were they one of the 8 best teams in the country? Can you name 8 teams that are better than this team? I don't think you can. So, I mean, maybe right. I know people kind of freaked out a little bit over D1 baseball putting them at number 7 after they were number 2 the week before. I'd be surprised if they're not, somewhere in that range, even if they lose on Friday, to be honest with you. But I think winning on Friday is important for different reasons, though, because I think it's better to have Anderson and Ianson throw before you get into a regional situation. I think having those 2 guys, having one of those 2 guys be off for 2 whole weeks, basically, would be great. So I think if you win that game, you get at least 2 games in, and you also further fortify your spot as a top 8 team.
Yeah, I think 18 innings is the perfect amount for this team in Hoover. 1 win, 1 loss, get on out. As far as handling Cade Anderson on Friday, he's had a heavy workload, as has Ianson, but you got to cross the Anderson Bridge first, we assume. You'd imagine he'll start. You think it's a full go, 114 pitches? Do you think it's somewhere closer to 90?
I think it's somewhere closer to 90. I mean, we saw with Paul Skeens 2 years ago where he was stuck in a 30-pitch inning and he was at 60-something pitches, and Jay just said, enough. We're not doing this because there's just too much stress we're putting on his body for a game that just doesn't matter enough.
Yeah.
And he talked about that a little bit yesterday, and I think if they run into that kind of situation this time around, then yeah, I think he'll do that. But if he's at 90 pitches in the 7th inning and there's 2 outs, Anderson or Ianson, honestly, if they're either and those 2 guys have cruised to that point, then they'll keep him out there probably. So I mean, it's a lot of it's going to depend on the score and the situation, but I would be really surprised to see either of them get over 100 pitches.
I would too. Safe travels over to Hoover, Koki. Enjoy it while you're there, and we'll see you at the box next week.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much.
He's Koki Riley, beat reporter for The Advocate. He'll be in Hoover. You can follow him along at Koki Riley on Twitter. Always good enough with a little bit of time here on these Wednesdays. All right, we're chugging right along. They are underway from Hoover, scoreless in the bottom of the 1st inning. It is Alabama and Tennessee. Tennessee going with Marcus Phillips on the mound, so they will not throw Liam Doyle today. Probably tomorrow is when you would see him if they can advance. But Tennessee trying to play their way to a host side. I think they're on the outside looking in right now. They could do some damage, though, because they're really talented, and they could make it all the way to Sunday if they play well this weekend. So we'll see. I'll keep you posted on that score as we move forward. On this Wednesday, we're back with more on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools.
Wednesday shows always brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools. I'm going to give you Joey Blanchard's cell phone here in a minute. Okay, well, what do I need Joey Blanchard's cell phone for? Well, Joey Blanchard is the owner of Renaissance Homes and Pools, and you're going to be in touch with him throughout the process of putting in your dream pool. You contact him, you have a consultation. That part doesn't cost anything. Sit down with Joey in front of that laptop. He's got this incredible software that will literally let you design to scale the pool of your dreams. You like that? Put it in. You don't like that? We'll make a change. It's all right there in front of you. And then you start the process, mapping things out, dig that pool. Joey might be there doing some of the digging if one of his guys is on a lunch break. But he's going to be there on site with you. As they're filling it in, finishing things up, Joey will be right there with you. He's a local company. He's done it for dozens and dozens and dozens of people around Baton Rouge. So if you're looking for the pool of your dreams, looking to make that dream come true, put a pool in the backyard, Renaissance Homes and Pools needs to be your first call. It's built by Renaissance.com, builtbyrenaissance.com. And as I said, here's Joey's cell phone number, 225-252-7745. 225 area code, obviously. 252-7749. It's Renaissance Homes and Pools. Renaissance Homes and Pools. You bring you our Wednesday shows each and every week. All right, let's play some What If Wednesday.
Time, space, reality. It's more than a linear path. Where a single choice can branch out into infinite realities. Follow me and ponder the question. What if?
I'm a little scared here because I think we're leaning heavy on the chat, and I know that can get off the rails in a hurry. So let's see what the Value 4 chat has in store today. I'm confident there's some cruel intentions in said chat.
Yeah, there are some that we probably won't read. But first one here. What if there was a 3-day long storm in Hoover?
Guys, did it even rain last night? It's no big deal. They moved one game to the next day. They're just going to move one game to Thursday. There's 3 games instead of 2. They're not even playing 4 games on Thursday. They usually play 4 games on Thursday. It's no big deal. If there is a 3-day long storm in Hoover, they're going to have some problems on their hands. But that's not going to happen because, as I said, the forecast is pretty good, and it remains pretty good.
Okay, we're just going to keep going there. All right, next one. What if you had to get a real job? I mean, you did kind of have a real job.
I've tried that twice.
Yeah.
I did oil and gas, and I worked in oil and gas for 13 months, and literally nothing that I did over the course of those 13 months actually benefited a project that went through. It was all like laying the framework and groundwork work, and then that project didn't happen. So nothing I did was consequential at all in those 13 months. I sold insurance for 7 years, learned a lot, worked with incredible people, and I'm glad I have that knowledge of insurance just moving forward. I'm just not great at sales. I don't push people hard enough. I'm not assertive enough. I'm non-confrontational. I like to let people sit back and do their own thing. I'm not aggressive by nature. I know that most people listening despise insurance, and I understand where you're coming from. I've seen the other side of it where it's really, really helped people. I think it was a great experience for me. I'm not very good at it. And you could determine whether or not you think I'm any good at writing for a website or talking on the air for 2 hours a day. But I feel more comfortable doing those two things. Just to say it. I'm not really qualified to do it. And amazingly enough, because this is not the case for a lot of people, I'm actually doing what I went to school for, which a lot of people don't do. It just took me a roundabout way to get there. So, yeah.
All right, next one here. What if you were a teacher? What subject and grade would you teach?
You got to take a couple of things into account there. One is the age and the personalities that you're managing in a classroom.
Yep.
And the other is the subject matter that you're supposed to teach. I have not been around high school kids in a long time. I feel like I do okay in that setting. I could not handle a class of 13 of my 3-year-old right now. Like that just, like I can physically handle them. Mentally, I would lose my brain because he can't his attention span is 2 seconds, and you can't reason with him at all. So it's certainly not like a daycare preschool thing. I might be able to handle 4th grade, but again, I'm not around a lot of 4th graders either. If we're talking about subject matter, it can't be math unless I mean, I can't even do algebra anymore. I used to be decent at algebra. Once you get into like calculus and trig and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's all too long. I can't figure it out. I'm good at English. I'm good at history because it doesn't change. And you just memorize it and go. So I guess if I'm roundabout answering this question, give me 8th grade history.
Well, what if you could do like what if you could teach like a writing class? Would you want to?
I don't want to read all the 8th graders because I'm not good enough to. And this is a relative term. Let me not use that term. I'm not good enough at telling what 8th grader is good at writing because it's still at an 8th grade level, and what 8th grader's not. Because like I'm now used to reading professional writing. That's all I read. So I don't want to read a bunch of 8th grade papers. I'll just say whether or not they got the second president right. And check.
You could. Well, I guess he says teacher. So I guess I think it would disclude college because then you'd be a professor at that point.
Well, I can't. I'm not teaching college kids.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I could teach a journalism class. Yeah.
You could do it.
I would want to teach column writing and not hard news.
All right, next one here. I think we actually had this one last week about if Kevin O'Sullivan and Wes Johnson go to Mississippi State. Didn't we have that one?
I think we had that same exact question.
Yeah, I think it was like the same one. What if Hunt was the head meteorologist at WAFB?
Well, I'd have to figure out how to work the green screen. And you'd have to really avoid those viral moments with the telestrator and things like that. Live TV can be a little tricky in that way. But yeah, they don't want me because I don't know anything at all. I mean, my favorite thing is we all just pull out our phones. Like I was telling you, I was at Jazz Fest and we were about to go in and like the skies opened up and we all, like there was like 8 of us, didn't know each other, huddled around a tree, and everybody's going to their weather app and everybody's got the weather app.
Yes.
It's way better than the other person's weather app. You get in a foursome of golf, no one can agree on when the break is or when the rain's coming or if it's coming because their weather app's better than yours, and you got weather.com and I got WeatherBug. Well, this is the one the fishermen use. Like everyone's got their weather app. I don't care about the weather app. Just all I know is I pay attention to the weather when it comes to baseball and golf. And when we start looking at the radar 4 days out, they're all wrong. So that's where I stand on that.
All right, how about this one? What if humans didn't have to eat to survive? How would the world change?
I'd be dropping a lot out of the economy. We do it's a lot of dollars and cents being spent on food.
That would probably maybe collapse. Maybe the economy would probably collapse, honestly.
It would.
Yeah.
Because then it'd all be like entertainment. And then like really all of our issues health-wise are because of the stuff we eat almost.
Yeah. And I don't know, that's kind of hard to concentrate. There's a lot of factors.
I'm not smart enough to answer that one.
Yeah. All right.
Have any more?
Yeah. Let's see. A few more here in the chat. What if Hunt had any tips on how to get a tea time at Cypress Point? Will he spill the secret?
Know somebody that knows somebody.
Yeah.
Life, this is imparted upon me very, very early. Life's not about what you know, it's about who you know oftentimes. And I don't think I've capitalized on that quite as much as I'd like to, but that was one instance where I knew somebody that knew somebody, and it really paid off big time. I've told you this, but I'll tell the listening audience. There are probably people who don't know what Cypress Point is. It's an exclusive club out west, and I got on because we knew somebody. And the caddy on the 18th hole was like, hey, when you come back, like come in August, it's a completely different course. And I looked at the caddy and I was like, I'm never coming back. This was it for me. I'm this little peon out from South Louisiana who got lucky because somebody knew somebody that was on Cypress Point. This ain't happening again. Like, I may play Pebble again. I'll probably play a couple of places that you can play with a credit card. Cypress Point ain't one of them. They sent us an email that said, don't wear shorts, don't use a locker room, don't use a driving range, and please leave when you're done. Like, that's kind of what it came down to. But I won't be back, but I have those memories banked, and it was fun.
All right, last one here. What if you could choose LSU football or baseball to dominate for the next decade?
Okay. Am I supposed to just answer the question, or can I toss a caveat in?
Well, what's your caveat?
Does the other one just get to play out its string, or the other one stinks?
Well, I think to make it interesting, you'd have to say that the other team is just going to be like mediocre for that decade as well. Because otherwise, I don't see what it would not be a hard choice.
I mean, for me personally, it's not even close. I'd rather the baseball team be awesome. But that's bad for my business. It's bad for this town if LSU football can't get out of neutral. And I realize that's a really important thing. So there's two answers to that question. Honestly, I'd probably take the football team dominating. It's just better for the school, better for our business, better for 98% of the people listening. And I don't think anyone that's listening is going to take that answer and go, "What? You don't care about the baseball team anymore?" I don't think I'm going to trick anybody that way. So I'll take the football team with an understanding that, hey, if it got flipped the other way and baseball was awesome for the next 10 years, that's just fine with Hunt. And I got a feeling baseball team's going to be just fine with number 2 in the dugout.
I think so.
That's my take on the situation. That is What If Wednesday. So I forgot, I was going to do this the first segment. We're going to do it here to close out the hour. I wrote a column in February with 4 bold predictions for the baseball team. It's time to grade how I did with those predictions. We'll do that coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com is the website. Every car that's online is on the lot at genesisofbatonrouge.com. It's all about convenience, customer service, and the relationship that you have over there at Genesis of Baton Rouge. I talk about this all the time, but you're never going to set foot on that lot and feel like you're being pushed, feel like you're being pressured, feel like you're being oversold. You're going to be treated like a guest. And once you make that purchase, you're going to get some of those incredible perks that come with being a Genesis driver. 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty, 3 years of Valet complimentary maintenance. They handle it all for you. And you get to work with some incredible people that are just very, very helpful every step of the way, whether it's the people in the service aisle, sales department, management, all of it. It's fantastic over there at Genesis of Baton Rouge. If you've never gotten behind the wheel, just put it on your list. They're right there on Airline, across from Women's Hospital at PQ. Gorgeous facility, phenomenal inventory, great people, and wonderful experience to be a Genesis driver. So get on by and see them. Genesis of Baton Rouge. Visit them online at genesisofbatonrouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools.
Let's take a look back at a early February column from LouisianaSports.net. 4 bold predictions for the 2025 LSU baseball season. It was penned by none other than myself. I went back and rewrote this with a grade of myself. But Beck, I'll let you grade my prediction. I gave myself a grade. We'll see if your grades are representative of what I thought of the predictions now that we have the benefit of all the hindsight of 55 games instead of 56. My first bold prediction, and I'll read a little bit about the blurb from it. LSU will not be swept this season. LSU got swept twice last year, once in Knoxville, one in Fayetteville. I think this team is deep. The depth in pitching and the depth in lineup means you don't have to rely on one guy, 2 guys that might go cold over the course of a weekend. And I felt like that LSU would stave off sweeps for the entirety of the season, knowing how tough that is, because 2 years ago, LSU was the only team in the conference that did not get swept. How would you grade that prediction, Beck?
I would grade it as a B.
A B?
Yeah.
I gave myself an F. That felt like a pass-fail, and we got swept. We got swept at Auburn.
Well,
but,
that's
I mean, they didn't get swept in the other 9.
It was just one
once.
time. So I would say that wasn't a terrible prediction.
I thought it was a reasonable prediction, and I am surprised it was at Auburn. I wrote in the thing that I thought the toughest 2 would be at Texas and at Texas A&M. I didn't put Auburn in there. Auburn was the one that tripped LSU up, so that one was incorrect. I had a bold prediction here, and I said it wasn't that crazy considering that Stephen Milam hit 8 home runs last year. But the point was, I think he's got more pop than you think. I think he'll hit 10 home runs and hit for more power as his LSU career progresses. As I wrote, Jerry Jones will be the most feared power hitter in the lineup. Luis Hernandez and Daniel Dickinson profile as power bats. Don't be surprised if Milan hits the second most on the team.
Yeah, that's gonna be an F.
What? He hit 10 home runs.
Oh, okay.
Stephen Milan will hit 10 home runs was the bold prediction.
Okay.
And he's got 10.
Okay, well then you got
and he hit the most in SEC play.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. Like he for some reason, it seems like I guess the last month or two he hasn't been. Very
he had
good.
a bad year on the batting average front. He hit 200 in league play, and I mentioned that in my updated version from today. I was like, I gave myself an A- on that because it was right, but it wasn't a big year for Milam. But I do think he's got some pop in his bat, and hopefully he found something with swinging the bat in South Carolina. So gave myself an A- on that one. Anthony Ianson will lead LSU in strikeouts. As I write, he's got a fastball in the mid-90s, really good breaking ball. He struck out 85 last year at UCSD. I think that number rises this year. Cade Anderson's probably the betting favorite to lead LSU in strikeouts, but I like Ianson's track record. I think he'll lead the LSU in Ks.
I'll give you a C for that one because he was second. So.
He was second. I gave myself a B. He was fourth in the nation in strikeouts. He was third in the SEC in strikeouts. So I felt like that's pretty. That was really where we were going there.
Yeah.
Cade Anderson was just awesome and got him by a little bit. So we're on the same page there. High C, low B there. But the point was right, and I wrote it because I really liked his breaking ball when I saw him in late January, and he was getting some swings and misses with it, and the gun was reading like 95, and I was going, there's some real stuff there. And then it didn't look like he had the big strikeout stuff really early, and then he struck out 15 in one of the non-conference games, and then he really got hot in league play. So I gave myself a B there. This is the most interesting one to grade. We'll see how you feel about it. Gavin Guidry and Connor Ware will both finish with at least 5 saves. Griffin Herring was the do-it-all out of the bullpen last year. I think there's enough depth on this staff for 2 guys to share that duty. I think it's Guidry with his pedigree and Ware, who's been the best LSU pitcher in the fall and early on. What do you think the grade is for that?
I would say like an A. I mean, I don't know that it's really fair because Guidry didn't pitch.
Guidry got hurt.
He got hurt. So
yeah, but Ware had none, and Guidry had none.
Yeah, so I would have to say I'd probably give you a D just because I'm not gonna give you an F because it's not fair because Guidry didn't pitch. So
I gave myself a C- because they really did go to 2 closers.
Yeah,
that they used in the back end to nail down games based on kind of matchup and whatever.
Who you said.
It just wasn't who I said. So I gave myself a C-, which is like barely a passing grade. But it was rooted in something that I thought I saw, but it didn't pan out because of an injury and one guy not progressing. I don't have a super awesome explanation for the Connor Ware thing. Like, I genuinely kind of feel bad when I mislead the LSU baseball fan base as badly as I did in this case. I wasn't alone. Jay Johnson talked up Connor Ware, said they were so lucky to get him through the draft. He might be their best pitcher. He didn't give up a run in the fall. Not one. Not in inter-squads, not in scrimmage against ULL, not an inter-squad against Samford. None. He gave up no runs. And he was throwing like 92, good changeup. Breaking ball was good enough. His strikeout numbers were good in JUCO. His brother was a really good player at Auburn. Like, I just felt like this guy's going to be a real dude. And it just never really happened. And, like, I shouldn't feel anything personally bad about that, but it kind of does because I feel like I'll kind of lean on us to go be eyes and ears and report what we see and have reasonably informed opinions. And when I tell you that Connor Ware might be the best pitcher on the staff and we get to the middle of May and he's nowhere to be found, like, that's a big whiff.
It is, but it's not. You were just saying that based on what you saw.
It was.
It's not like you were just going. It's not like you were going out on a limb saying, "Oh, this." I don't know. We haven't seen much from this guy, but I think he might be the best pitcher on the staff. Like you were just using the evidence that you had.
It just didn't pan out. But I think all of these were rooted in some sort of truth that wound around. LSU did only get swept once this season. They won 7 of 10 conference series. So, yeah, that was a pass-fail deal, and I missed. Stephen Milam hitting 10 home runs. He did, and he was second on LSU's team. Actually tied for first on LSU's team in home runs in SEC play with 6 of them. Ianson leading LSU in strikeouts. That did not happen, but he did roll up huge strikeout numbers. Gavin Guidry and Connor Ware both finishing with the leads 5 saves. Well, Kason Evans and Zach Cowan each had 6. So you're talking about the 2 guys getting to that number that I had forecast, just very much the wrong 2 guys. And, man, Guidry will be a what-if for this team if it doesn't work out because although I never felt Gavin Guidry was a dominant pitcher at LSU, when he went in, he was going to throw strikes. He was going to have a good breaking ball, which could get ground balls and could strike guys out. And he had the intestinal fortitude to get it done. Like, he'd pitched in big spots. He closed out a College World Series. It wasn't a blowout, yes, but closed out a College World Series. He pitched in huge spots in Chapel Hill last year, and just never was able to get out on the mound due to that back issue. So those are my predictions that were sure to go wrong, and some did go wrong. Some were reasonably correct. You can read that in a little bit more detail up at LouisianaSports.net. All right, we'll pause for Sports Center. When we come back in the second hour, get you some sound from Blake Baker from this morning on Off the Bench, talk some football. Luke Johnson's talking Saints. In my final edition of the SEC Baseball Power Rankings, we will do that when we come back in hour number 2. Don't go anywhere. So Wednesday edition, Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.